yeah, like I actually asked not to introduce me that much. And well, the biggest introduction you're gonna get from me probably is that, hi, I'm Andrew and I make games. And why I really wanted to make it like that today is because actually, like in all honesty, like with all the talks that I've been able to catch through all the years that I've been an artist and been learning, uh, it's really not that important right now since you're already here. Who am I? But much more important, what I have to say and how will you treat it. And that's the idea. So without really knowing that much, I want you to take everything I say with a pinch of salt. I don't approach it analytically. Try to figure out what do you think about it, what works for you. It's not like some sort of experience that I have that you have to replicate yourself. You have to take it and make it your own. And I mean, even in fact, if you'll be able to disprove everything I say by the end of this talk, be my guest. I'll be nothing but thankful, because that's the way we grow as an industry and we move forward, because you are supposed to be the future, and the future is not all about learning the past, but actually building upon it, or even destroying it at times if we have to. But I mean, to like start it off a bit more, I know, illustrative with a little story. Here's a picture that you see over there. That's the guy that's bold and smiling. His name's Jeffrey Katzenberg, and he's like a big wig at Hollywood, and he was a creative director at Disney for quite a long time. He's responsible for this creative renaissance that Disney had with its animated movies in the late 80s and stuff like that. And this is the story that I actually heard from the keynote by David Jaffe. If you know who the guy is, he's actually the creator of God of War and heavy metal. And like one time he was attending a lecture by Jeffrey Katzenberg in one of the California's universities. And I mean, I know that you guys probably like your talks more about, like, you know, how to make this, like, push this button, get this result, or like how I made this particular project or whatever, or like, hey, here's a super deep insider trick, you know, how to get in the industry, how to get your foot in the door, or like, I don't know, advance your career. And the talk today is going to be nothing like that. And one of the reasons is because of Jeffrey Katzenberg said in that lecture. Because one of the students, as it always happens with that kind of talk, ask him, okay, how do I get in the industry? How do I do movies? Because I really want to get started professionally. And Jeffrey, from what I think, gave like one of the best answers you could give. He said that those people in this audience today that truly believe in what they do, that truly love what they do, that truly care about it, they are going to find a way to create something that will resonate with people. And they will find a way, never mind what I'll say today. They'll make their own ways, or they, I don't know, just do something. That was basically his idea, that it's not about some roads that everyone has traveled before you, but the road that you will find for yourself. So instead of answering these like lifelong questions that's been just written into the ground a million times, we're going to do something different. Today we're going to pose ourselves a question that not many artists actually get to pose to themselves in like their whole professional career, or like even their lifetime. Because it takes time to arrive at a certain point where you will ask yourself, okay, what will I do when I can do anything? Because right now, what you're doing, you're learning to like model and texture and animate, and you probably thinking, okay, to learn how to model, I gotta learn 3ds Max. You know, how to paint textures, gotta know Photoshop and stuff like that. But what happens when you know how to do all that? What happens when you can model everything? What happens when you can texture everything? How many of you right here in this room right now have a clear idea of what you're going to do then? Just let's see, just a show of hands, just in case. You see, it's like 7, 8 people, I guess, maybe 9, and that's actually great, and that is way more than I expected, but still, you know, you can obviously see the proportion of this audience is obviously not enough. So, I mean, even though most of you don't know what you're going to do when you'll be able to do anything, and some of you do, one thing, and probably one thing only, is gonna unify all of it, is you probably think that you're going to be doing something beautiful. But here's a question. After all those years of hard work that you're going to put into becoming so proficient and so intimate with modeling and texturing, whatever it is that you chose, animation, will you know what beauty is? Is there a guarantee for you right there? How can you be confident of that, for one? And for two, what is beauty, actually, if we'll try to pose that question to ourselves right now? And this is something that we're going to be talking about today, and this is something that I had to ask myself years into when I already was a professional. And it was actually pretty disappointing because at some stage in my life, I just realized that being an artist for such a long time, I was asking myself the wrong questions. I was maybe teaching myself the wrong things. And this became really scary. But before we jump into the details, let's just, yeah, I'll just walk you through how it actually sort of happened to me that I asked myself that question. The piece that you see here is my own personal portfolio project. It's called Genius Kids Garage. It was made on UDK about 2 years ago. And I mean, at that point, I was like 2 years in the industry, and I spent like a bunch of years before that for studying and getting in, and I felt pretty good about it. I was like, hey, yeah, I think I accumulated enough knowledge to make it, sophisticated enough and have a good level of, like graphical quality with all my assets that were in there. And so the purpose of this piece was to like assemble a cool portfolio and then just send it out to employers that were supposed to just line up and throw money at me, like just begging to come work for them, which obviously never happened. But it did teach me something, and that was very, very important for me. I mean, as you can see, there's like a lot of details in here, and all the assets actually had their high polys modeled. I went through the whole process of baking it down and then doing all the texture in Photoshop properly and all the decals and the effects, and you can see like the depths of fields and the glows and whatever. So it was supposed to look okay. And actually, after having not got any jobs with that, I started asking my friends who were working at like some big-ass AAA studios all over the world what they think about it. And yeah, bear in mind, it was like 2 years ago. And I'm actually quoting one answer right now, and it was like, dude, well, I'm already quoting, like, it pains me as an artist and as a professional in the industry to see that kind of artwork barely getting any replies at all, because some of the people that I work with have a worse portfolio. So, I mean, this is just to show you that I felt pretty good about this piece. I thought that I did okay. I knew that there was a certain quality to it that I was proud of, in a way, But then something happened. This is another piece that I saw around the time that I was wrapping up my artwork, and this one is done by the artist by the name of Paul Svoboda. He is now an environment artist at Epic Games in Raleigh, North Carolina, and as you can see, he's pretty badass. But, I mean, for me, at that time when I just saw this piece, I remember just so clearly thinking to myself, wow, wow, it looks so cool. That was all that I thought. But it was enough to ask me, okay, did anyone say wow when they saw my piece of artwork? I mean, I used to approach artwork so analytically, trying to break it down into all these pieces and try to work with each one in particular and make every single asset count and make them pretty, But then when I saw this, I realized that it has like a way bigger impact. And that was weird. I started, really looking into it, just trying to find the slightest flaws that I could. And I mean, there was like, hey, look, there's like super low acceleration on those edges along the steps, and you can see the low poly bucket handle and whatnot. And like the rocks are like low poly, and you can see the texture stretching, and there's actually grass growing through them. So I was like, yeah, my environment's supposed to be cooler. Hey, I made all this cool high poly stuff. I textured it with all the proper specs and respecting like material definition and stuff like that. But here it's like, hey, yeah, it's a building. It's 1, 2 trees probably just populated around the environment. But it was way cooler. So I just tried to wrap my head around it, and I had a hard time doing it. So, I mean, right now, I would just be curious if any of you guys have an idea. Just put in these two images right next to each other, why the one of the left has a more profound impact on the audience. Sure, go ahead. The mood is actually a good one, and it's like the answer that I tend to get a lot with that question. But then there is a question: what is a mood? How do you define a mood? Yeah, exactly. But being an artist, there's something abstract about this term. It's like it is a mood, but mine also has a mood. It's just a different mood. Why his mood is better than my mood? What is it about this, abstract substance that makes his work better? I mean, the color is actually a very good point as well, but I mean, that's still, I don't know, arguable, because I mean, I got some colors here and there too. There's like some red, some yellows, and he's got all this yellowish reddish palette. But once again, why is yellow and reddish palette better than what I have over there? I mean, how is this logical? How do I not make that mistake again? How do I make sure that when I make my stuff the next time, it's going to be pretty? And I'm not going to end up, spending months to arrive at a certain point where I've done this piece of artwork that I thought I was proud of, but then someone else comes along, probably even, well, not probably, but maybe having spent less time and less effort than I did, but they have chosen their initial idea more wisely. So their piece of art is going to look better than mine, no matter what I do. That was actually the problem. And I like to analyze it a bit further, actually turned to both like sources of our environment because we both used references. And mine was the image on the left by Arnold Tang. And Paul used the one on the right, which is like a classical painting by Benjamin Leader. And so even at this stage, when I just stripped away everything that we've done, but I just took the rough idea, I could already see that his one is still way more beautiful, that it had like a more profound impact in a way. And that was really weird because as it turns out, I could have not even did my environment like at all to understand that his one would be better just because of the poor choice of initial idea. And that was worrying me because suddenly, I realized, having spent like so many years being an artist and learning to be an artist, that after I'm like very comfortable with my modeling and texturing and shaders and engines and whatnot, I wasn't really in control of the beauty of my own artwork. Because I had, as it turns out, had no idea how to do that. I just did stuff. And that was just crazy for me. It just blew me away at some point because it gets really scary. You're starting to feel pretty insecure about it. So yeah, I try to like look back and understand, okay, all the art education that I got, like the way that I taught myself and the way that I've been taught at an art school, which I did just a year of, but still it was enough. I mean, usually what the education was. It was like, yeah, push this button, like, yeah, here's like a hat, just draw it, or like here's a still life, here are your watercolors, just go at it. And when you can just take this hat and just copy it on your piece of paper as realistically as possible, it is somehow now supposed to be beautiful. But then again, you take, I don't know, a carpenter and you bring him like blueprints and he cuts the thing out of wood. What's the difference between you two? How are you more of an artist than he is? You are just taking something that exists, like be it real or virtual form, like in the form of a blueprint or something in front of you, just transfer it onto something else. That's how it works. That's how a lot of artists work, especially aspiring ones, because you want to do artwork because you're inspired. And when you're inspired, you just want to try to recreate this, something that you're inspired by. Try to put your own twist on it, but still it's somewhere there in the core. That's what motivates you. You're not there thinking, okay, what would be the most beautiful thing for me to do? How do I, make my artwork pretty? You're thinking, okay, this guy, or like this, I don't know, movie or something looks so awesome, I want to do something like that. And this could be pretty misleading. That could lead you in a dead end if you're not really conscious and cautious about it. So yeah, that was something for me, and I mean, it was freaking scary. And yeah, just to like illustrate the point a bit more vividly with all the drawing and painting or whatever, there is like a huge gap in between the physical process of waving your hand around with a pencil and the actual process of drawing. And it's kind of hard to grasp, we're talking about art. When we're talking about music, it becomes more clear. Because when you're composing music, the notes themselves have nothing to do with the instrument. This beautiful piece of music that you come up with is supposed to be beautiful no matter what instrument you play it on, be it like a cello or a fiddle, keys, guitar, whatever. That is what you compose. This is your art, and not in the process of execution of it. And the same goes for art. I mean, if you're capable of making a beautiful portrait, it's not about drawing or painting, or like, I don't know, doing it with charcoals or in Photoshop. It's about this knowledge that goes into making something beautiful, which apparently doesn't have that much to do with the tools itself, with the process. The process is just the way you learn, but there's like this vast, I don't know, amount of stuff that you have to know apart from that. And that was me at that point. I was like just going crazy, tearing my hair out. But yeah, so I started getting into it. I was like, okay, I need to somehow define beauty for myself. I want to make sure that I never make this mistake again. I don't want to arrive at a point where I wasted days, weeks, months, or even like years making a piece of artwork only for it to turn out subpar to someone who had a better initial idea. Whether that person was lucky or not, whether it was a conscious choice, it just feels like it nullified all your hard work and effort. And that was scary. So when trying to identify, like define beauty, you immediately just hit so many obstacles because usually you hear that beauty is like, I know it's individual. Every person perceives beauty differently. So that sort of makes it impossible to define because everything is beautiful for himself in a way. So that we will address in a couple of seconds. But here you see like the first point that I have is that beauty is actually no longer a primary objective in art. And I mean, there's a reason that at the title of our talk today we have the word representative, because we're talking about representative art and beauty in it. And here you can see like this contrast in the North Carolina Museum of Arts, where you see like the classical paintings hanging on the wall right next to something abstract and way more modern. And you can see that the artists that eventually sort of grew into this abstract direction, they probably were educated as classical artists at some point. So what happened is that this establishment basically carried over this terminology that classic art had. And the pieces on the left and the images on the right are both considered beautiful. But I guess it should be pretty obvious that it's sort of not the same thing. It's a different kind of beauty that we're talking about. I mean, probably someone could argue that like some very profound level you could like link in, but that is not something that we are going to do today. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't really care for that much because as we're here, our artists to produce something that is going to be pleasing our audiences, that is hopefully be mainstream or not, it's going to be beautiful for people all around. We want to focus on the more representative part of it just because it's easier to understand, because this is something that is constant for every person, like their perception of reality. So this is something that we'll try to talk about. And I mean, speaking about beauty being personal in a way, here's a story by an artist. It's actually a contemporary American painter by the name of Scott Burdick, and this is his image, which is beautiful as most of his artwork is. And this is his story of him actually like walking through this North Carolina Museum of Arts and seeing a bunch of high school teenagers just walking by, on a field trip or something. So they're just, wandering the gallery with their iPods and the headphones hanging down and eating chips or whatever. I don't know how it works. But they basically come up to this painting, this classical painting with a woman holding a little baby angel in her hands. And they stop for a moment. They stop and they observe, probably in awe, until one of them, in a few moments, utters, "This is like beautiful." And this is just something so amazing and fascinating to me, something so profound, because the artist that painted that image had nothing to do with these kids. They come from different time periods, from different cultures, probably even never spoke the same language. Yet still, there is something about that piece of artwork that transcends generations and cultures and years and centuries and whatever, and it makes you feel something. And that was fascinating. That was, to me, something that I thought is worth pursuing as a study, trying to figure out, trying to put a finger on what is this exactly that those students were feeling. And this is actually something that we're going to try to answer today. This is the question that we're posing to ourselves. But, I mean, trying to quantify it, with classical artwork, I actually took it like as a start. I was like, yeah, classical art has this sort of beauty that is vague and undescribable that I got to look into. And after going through hundreds of images and stuff like that, eventually I came to realize that there are also like issues about classical art where just the technique matured or it was like a new direction, so that why it remained in the museums, why it was popular. So I tried to look for something that would define what those high school kids felt a bit better. And I found this. This is pretty much the best reaction that you can hope to get from your audience, at least in my opinion. You know why? There's been this psychologist, Maxwell Maltz, who said that conscious thinking inhibits the creative process in our mind. It just jams it altogether. And in a way, I agree with him. I mean, there's this little story where, like, as a kid, I was playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, like, all the time. And there was, like, this super hard combo trick that I couldn't pull off. And then my mom calls me on the phone. I just pick up the phone. I start talking with her while playing simultaneously. And then only when I hang up the phone, I realized that I actually did it. I pulled off the combo while not even being conscious about it. And that was kind of cool because I realized that probably all those thoughts that I have are getting in the way, you know? So when talking about art and perception of art, perception of creative process, I personally also think that the conscious thinking does something to you in that minute, because I mean, we're brought up in some sort of culture, you know, we're educated that some sort of imagery is, I don't know, good or bad, or you're like, as a kid you see this piece of abstract art which is like a bunch of squares and you're like, hey, this is stupid. And then your parents tell you, no, it's not stupid, it's art, you'll grow up, you understand, stuff like that. So it's not something natural, you know, something that comes without any interference from your conscious thinking. But wow is as natural and as irrational as it gets. Wow is like the best measure of an artwork that you could get from people, because it's as honest as it's ever going to be. So that's what I try to study. And, you know, in order to study the wow, as it turned out, it's way easier to just go online, because, like, with the galleries, yeah, you see the images, they're good, but you can't really judge the feedback of the audience that much. But when you go online into all those, like, even like photography galleries, you know, where they actually aggregate the feedback, and you can see all the likes, all the favorites, and all the shares and the comments and whatnot, and you can actually judge what people perceive as beautiful, what is worthy of their wow. So this is something that I was doing like crazy for a couple of weeks, just going through so much images, eventually breaking it down into this 6 elements that just came to be my definition of beauty in representative art. And I mean, so far, for me, it's like an axiom in math, you know? It's something that rings true for me until it's proven wrong. That's why I'm telling that if you feel like disproving it, I mean, go ahead by all means, but before you do that, we'll go ahead through all the explanations and all the examples that we might have for each and every of those pieces of artwork to just help you see it a bit more clearly in a way. But just before we do that, we're just going to go quickly through some of those elements. Like, subject is pretty obvious, right? Your art is always supposed to have subject. You can deal with it if it's representative art, obviously. But after the subject comes the lighting, and this is something that images just don't exist with. And it actually was pretty, weird for me as an artist, because I started out as a modeler, and, you know, all I could do was model. So when I would present my models, they looked like crap, honestly. And that was because my lighting sucked. And I had no idea. I was like, hey, I'm a modeler. I don't want to do lighting. Why am I supposed to do lighting? This is wrong. I just want to model. But, well, I hate to break it to you guys, but no image ever exists without lighting. That's just not how the world works. Your eye perceives everything as light coming into it. So if you, as an artist, ignore it in whatever you do, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Because if you're not consciously going to make it good, then it unconsciously going to make your work bad. And that's just the way it works. And you can't ask people to just perceive the object side of your image, because if they are there to judge your art, then they will probably do it subconsciously, you know, irrationally. They're just going to feel if they like it or not. So it won't work. That's why you just have to be conscious of it. And this is like a hard lesson that I had to learn. And the next one is, you can see scale and detail and actually put them in the same element. This is because it's just a matter of putting it. I mean, something very huge could be a detail, like, you know, like a picture of Grand Canyon, you know, it's like, oh my God, this is like a huge vista, and you see all that stuff going on, and you feel amazed because it's great, right? But on the other hand, you could take something as usual and as common as a human face, and you can light it in such a way and use such a sharp focus that you're going to see every single detail there is, all the pores on the skin, all the little cuts and scars and hairs and whatnot. And then it's also going to be detailed. And your brain is just going to process it the same way. It's like, yeah, details here, details there. So I, you know, try to unify them in order to just cut down on the amount of elements we have, and because it just made sense. And the next one is composition. This one's actually pretty important because it needs some more definition. Composition in itself is the way is like what we show and how we show it. Basically, these are the two things that you need to remember about composition. But there's more to it than you think, because your eye is actually a lens. Whether you like it or not, all the imagery that you are used to perceiving in this modern day culture is also perceived through a lens, be it of a camera or a camcorder or whatever. So you can't really get away from it. And I mean, when you're making your image, you could just make something out of focus in the background, and it's going to look cool. And this is great for you. And this is actually the way your eye works as well. But you just can't concentrate or something that's out of focus physically. But you can't do it in an image. And you really can't disregard that, because with the photography and, everything that I just mentioned, it just became such a natural part of our lives and our cultures that thinking about all the lens effects that we could have, and I mean, it's talking about like lens flares or depths of field effects or like wide angle, narrow angles, and POV and stuff like that. It's just, this is very crucial. I mean, I also happened to like shoot myself in the foot with them when I was making an environment for a polycount brawl contest. I don't know if you guys remember it, but basically I made my block out for my level, for my like presentation shot in 3ds Max. And I thought, yeah, it looks cool. I like my composition and everything. Then I exported it into UDK, and suddenly I realized that something doesn't match. It looks different. And then it just hits me that the FOV was different. In 3ds Max, by default, you have like 45 degrees field of view. But in UDK, it's 90, so it's like that wider. And suddenly, all my composition changed. And I usually never even, gave any thought to my FOV. I was like, yeah, I'm just modeling texture and stuff. Why should I do that? But that dramatically changed my composition. That gave me more space. That gave me more, real screen real estate in a way where I could just populate stuff. And I mean, I could not be conscious about it. And I'll be just doing myself a disservice, because you can't get away from lighting as much as you can get away from composition and the sort of lens effects of your eyes as well, and all the cameras and everything that we're used to. So the last is the colors, and they're pretty self-explanatory, but the one thing that's worth mentioning is that they all are somewhere, in between. There's not an image that exists without all those elements, probably except for black and white imagery, lacking colors. But I mean, for me, like the way I managed to break it down is that all those elements and their specific contribution eventually amount to some particular like beauty number. So you can't really put your finger on just how much, like this color is like for 35 or something. But usually looking at an image, you can actually, if you try to break it down, you can judge, at least relatively, how much colors are important in this image, how much are they making it work in our scale or detail. So eventually this thing that I got to call a beauty bar fills up, and after hitting a certain threshold, your image becomes beautiful just because of all their contributions. And I mean, this is just like a more rationalized way of you perceiving it, and I imagine it must be very confusing by now. So what we'll do is we'll go to examples. I mean, some of those images could not be like drop dead gorgeous, and this is because I made a specific effort to try to emphasize only one of those elements at a time. So I could show you that, okay, all of those images are like from award galleries online and stuff like that, for photography, game art, or like AAA video games that everyone considers drop dead gorgeous. So this is what we're going to have in those images. And I mean, this first one I actually like quite a lot because it's impressive, this view that we have. But it's actually your subject. When you look at this image and someone asks you, okay, what makes it work? What is like the main trait of this image that makes it outstanding? It is the subject, because you can't just change it and have the same image. You don't have much here in way of colors, it's almost like pretty orange everywhere, and you don't have much in terms of lighting, because there's no complex lighting going on and no effects and everything like that. It's pretty plainly lit. And composition as well, because it's just a bird's eye view or something. But you see there in the bottom, I actually left some space for scale, because it's sort of supposed to be huge, but here's the trick. You have nothing to judge scale by in this image. You don't really know if it's huge. For all you know, it could be just a pile of dust, just lying in some sort of a box or whatever with a light at the end. There is nothing to judge the scale of the image by. So the thing that just makes your brain tickle when you see it is the object. It's just this particular thing that makes it so awesome and fascinating. I mean, if you go into something else, like grab this image, for example, it's also about subject, because what you see there makes you go, it's like, oh my God, that's so cool. I would like to see it in real life, you know? These guys are doing something fantastic, and the photographer did an amazing job of just freezing this moment. But what's going on in this moment is what makes this image worthwhile. I mean, as you can see, it is accordingly adjusted in the beauty bar, where you have like a lot of space allocated to your subject. But then again, when you look at the lighting, you also have a very cool lighting, because you have this lens flare, and as you can see, the light is actually coming from the back because it's sunset, but somehow the two guys on the front are properly exposed and everything, that because the photographer took extra special care to put a flash somewhere to the right and the back, so he would have them properly lit and separated from the background. So lighting in here has been given some proper thought. And also, speaking about composition, as you can see, there's like certain amount allocated to it as well. Why is it cool here? Because technically, you know, you have just a midground, basically no foreground, background, nothing blurred or whatever. It's the horizon line. As you can see, the thing that makes this shot way more dynamic is this curvature along the horizon line because of the very wide angle lens. It also makes this image more special, and this is actually a composition issue, because this is not only what you show, but this is how you show. This is how the photographer chose to portray this particular event by just bending the horizon, making the whole thing way more dramatic. Okay, I hope that doesn't need that much explanation. It's colors. This image is great, okay? It looks very, very pleasant in a way. But it's mostly about colors. And how do you know that? Try to replace the subject inside your head. Like, okay, if it was like a squirrel or, I don't know, a dude sitting there, the image would probably still be okay, because the colors and the depths of field, you know, that you see the composition there at the bottom, that make it awesome. So you could exchange your subject and keep like this sort of studio environment, and your image will still be beautiful, because this environment contributes so much to beauty. So it's not the subject here, really. I mean, going forward, one thing, if you had to name one thing that is the most outstanding about this image, probably there would be little doubt that it's the color, because it's unusual, because it feels, you know, fresh and unrealistic, and yet not that abstract. Somehow it feels rooted in reality, you know. So that's what makes this image great. And now when you look at images, because before, you see, we've had that trouble. We looked at two images right at the beginning, where I show you my work and Paul's, and we couldn't really tell why the one on the left is more beautiful than the one on the right. Well, this isn't supposed to happen for you anymore. This isn't supposed to be like that. You can't look at images and always know why something is better than the other, why one image is more appealing. You can break it down and you can analyze it. You can tell yourself, okay, yeah, this has better lighting. I can clearly see, or like, here we have the most amazing composition while the other one lacks it. Now you can be conscious about it. Now you can, in a way, internalize it. You can break it down. You can keep something for yourself, because now when you're, you know, getting inspired by something, you're not just blindly trying to recreate it. You're able to identify what is it that inspired you so much about that piece, and then you can take it out. You don't have to, you know, take all the bad traits of that stuff. You can just concentrate on the good stuff, and that could make you that much better of an artist. So as you see here, it's just the colors, but then the lighting, because we have like this soft diffuse light coming in from the window and the stuff up top, and also the composition. And it's actually cool. It's worth explaining, because as you can see, these shelves to the right and to the left create this convergence lines, like just identifying your 1-point perspective, and they actually converge like pretty dynamically in a way. I mean, this is not the way your eye would really perceive it. I mean, you've been like at a shop or dépanneur or whatever like a million times, and the stalls or the shelves don't look that awesome. That's because the author here actually, consciously or not, made them converge a lot more. He used a wider lens in a way to show more, and that made that stuff converge more. So that created for a more dynamic composition. And this is something, when you're paying attention to it, I mean, the author could even not know about it, you know, not being conscious about it, but now you are. So now when you're doing something similar, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to use a wider field of view here. That's going to be awesome. Oh, I love this one. You know, when I was in art school and I was doing like still lifes and everything, and I remember looking at like amazing still lifes by some classical painters, and I was always going, oh my God, did like such a great job copying what they've seen in front of themselves with paints or whatever it was. But now I realized how wrong I was. This was just crap. The thing that was so amazing about them is that they could take those usual objects that you find every day in your household, this boring jar and apples and whatever, and just arranged it in such a manner and find such lighting that would make it just outstanding, because it takes some crazy skill to show as usual things as this in such a new light, in such a beautiful light. That's the thing. It's not about just copying what you see in front of you. This is something I was being so wrong about. They actually understood, once again, consciously or not, the good lighting and that kind of composition and the kind of combination of colors that they have would make these simple things look so great. And this is just way more profound than just repeating stuff that you can see in front of you. It still blows me away. I like this image a great deal, and you know why? Because it is completely devoid of substance. In a way, you have no detail in there. You know, it's like as as abstract as you can be while still staying realistic and in a way representative. And this is just great because you can see you can do without details. When you look at this image, you immediately understand why is it beautiful. You can add all your details in there, and you can, you know, paint all the birds up there and all the facades and the trees. But the beauty of it wouldn't change. It would still be the same. This core value that made it amazing would still remain. So yeah, that's what just blew me away. And right now we're talking about lighting, and here lighting in combination of color just produces an amazing, very profound painterly effect. And it makes this image great without any kind of detail, scale, or composition, or even substance, because it's just a street corner. You've probably seen images like this in real life 100 times, but none of them were that magnificent because the artist managed to capture this lighting and those amazing colors. Okay, so now we're actually closing in on composition. And this is actually also really cool because you can see that the author here simplified the image as much as he could. It's pretty much cartoony in a way. Well, not in a way. It is cartoony. It's like it's once again devoid of any kind of detail. And yeah, you have this roundhouse kick going on or whatever. And the thing that actually makes it like so dynamic and so unusual for us is because we see this very crazy, you know, depths of perspective in this image. You know, you see this leg just going out there into the distance, and the same with the hand holding the tie. You know, it just separates the space, shows it depths in a way that you don't really see much in real life, and that fascinates you. I mean, you could keep the same sort of setting, the same thing going on, but if you just rotate the camera and choose something way less flattering, in a way, the image would probably lose the majority of its charm. You know, if you could just do like a simple view from the side with not that wide of a lens or something, it wouldn't be that amazing, because this is like the cherry on top of that image, or just the image itself, you know? And once again, going for composition, this is actually pretty cool. This is also like one of those 5-star images in photographers' galleries. And I mean, the thing is that the subject of this image is a handrail. It's like, you imagine just, you know, coming up to your buddy and saying, hey, dude, I've seen the amazing image of a handrail. It just blew me away. Yet, in a way, it can, because as you can see, when you're using the composition as in terms of lens effects, the depth of field, you have all your bokeh in the background, it turns magnificent. It turns a bit magical. That's something about photography that still fascinates people, because we are incapable of capturing that in real life. It probably still happens, but you just can't focus on it. And that's what makes it cool. So yeah, once again, this image looks great, but the main contribution that we have here is the composition and the way that we choose to portray this handrail and the city in the back while blurring it and creating this really cool bokeh effect. Okay, we actually came to our last point, which is scale. And as you can see, this image is all inspiring by default, just because we're showing something so huge. Yeah, you just go speechless. That's the thing. That's the point of it. That we have so many details in there that it just fascinates us. That's all we have. I mean, the subject, yeah, it contributes. The lighting, well, it's a more of a, like diffused, foggy city lighting coming from the side. But that's it. Not much in terms of colors, because they're like pretty dim, and you have this like slight blue glow and everything, and composition as well, because you, once again, don't have any like foreground, midground, background separation. You don't have any lens effects. It just as is. But the scale of it makes you go, wow. So this is the fifth, and talking about detail. This is the image that is just all about detail. Subject is, you probably don't even understand what the subject is. It's like, yeah, it's some robo dude or whatever, but he's just covered with detail. It's all over. And that, in a way, makes you fascinated by this. I actually had this sort of a problem with CenterNAD because, I started as a modeler, and the only thing, the only way I could contribute to the beauty of my images turned out to be detail. Because when you're just modeling, you don't know anything about lighting or composition. You probably choose your subjects poorly when you just start out. But what you can do, you can just litter with detail and throw, I don't know, thousands of hours on it, and it will look cool because it has a lot of detail. But this is non-sustainable in a production environment, and this is a really bad habit that I had to teach myself to just drop. And I mean, you can probably know, like a lot of aspiring artists, when they presenting their shots, they just go into Photoshop and take some brushes and just overlay like grunge all over and like splatter and stuff. I used to do that too, because that was a way of making my images more complex without actually doing that much work. It's just the whole image with the presentation itself appeared to be more complex. But eventually, and I really like it actually, that it happened that way. A lot of more senior artists, even if they are not capable of expressing it like logically why they don't like it, they tend to resent overly detailed images. And I mean, one of the most helpful comments that probably I ever got on like online communities was just 3 words: too much shit. It was that way. I just modeled everything, make it like super detail intense, but I couldn't give a proper thought to my lighting, to my composition, so it just looked wrong. And some people, consciously or not, were graceful enough to advise me. So yeah, as you may have noticed, we've missed one point, which was quality of execution. And which sort of seems like a major one, right? Because that's what you focus on for years before you actually consider yourself a more or less proficient artist. But nevertheless, how could quality execution contribute to beauty? I mean, having outlined all those factors, how do you think, maybe some of you have any idea, how does quality of execution make it even better? Any ideas? Yeah, that's what I thought, because it doesn't. That's the trick. You know what? Quality of execution does not make your stuff better. It can just make it worse. That's the thing. That when you're learning to model or texture or whatever, you're just learning to not kill that beauty potential that you put into it. You're learning not to destroy the perception of all those colors and subjects and whatever it is that you're inputting in your image. But that's it. And after a certain point, when the quality of execution is there, you're just left to wonder in the darkness, like, why the hell isn't my stuff pretty? Because you weren't concentrating on the right thing. That's your answer. And actually here, we're going to have just a little breakdown for you guys of how this stuff works. It's actually just useful in everyday practice. As you can see, quality of execution is down there in the bottom. I don't know if you're familiar with the term hygienic factor, but basically what it means is the same as hygiene. When your hygiene level is up, it doesn't really make you healthier. But as soon as it goes down, it contributes to deterioration of your health. The same with beauty. The same as with quality of execution. As soon as it's okay, as soon as it's on the level, your images are just the way they are. But as soon as it starts going down, your images start looking like crap. I mean, if you like math, here's like a little coefficient in the end where you just multiply your beauty on by quality of execution. The quality of execution could only be from 0 to 1. That's just, that's it. I mean, for the elements up top, you see that they're separated into 2 groups: property of subject and property of presentation. And this, okay, we're running late. Sorry about that. Okay, so property of subject and property of presentation, basically, as you can see, when you have your subject fixed, like you're a photographer, and you wanna, like, I know you have to photograph the dishes at a restaurant. Your subject is fixed, but in order to make it beautiful, you can resort to your lighting, to your composition. You could probably fiddle with detail around it or something like that, but that's what it is. And on the other hand, I mean, if you have to depict a certain location or something, a certain condition, you can think about what could be going on in there that could really make it beautiful. And just that helps. I mean, I'm learning concept art now, and when I paint something and it just looks boring, you just add something glowy in there, you know, and it would do for a while. I mean, it's obviously like a cheap hack, but you realize that you're, okay, I'm keeping like my lighting and composition and everything because it's too late to redo that stuff, but I can add like a different subject in a way, like something that would attract attention, but also be glowy and shiny, which is kind of cool, so it also contributes to lighting. So yeah, that would be it. But okay, we had a little test here for you guys just to try this thing out, but I guess you can all do it on your own. Maybe we'll have some time during the Q&A if someone wants to take it. But so far, there is one thing that I wanted to ask you. And this is, okay, yeah, we managed to define beauty like from that many angles in a lot of ways, but there has to be something that connects it all, you know, something that is common between every single picture that we've seen, something that makes you go, wow, there is like supposed to be some sort of reason to it. And I was wondering if anyone had any idea. Okay, that's not really that important because it's rarity. The thing about beautiful things is that they are rare. You won't really be amazed by the view that you see a million times every day unless it is presented in some kind of rare conditions, like a very rare dramatic lighting and stuff like that. And that's actually just the way your brain works. You get used to stuff. If you know photography a bit, you probably know that like the golden hour for outdoor shooting is at dusk and at dawn, because everything looks like way more dramatic and you have all those reds and sunset, sunrise, whatever. And the thing is, this time also happens to be the rarest kind of lighting that you get during the day, because plain old blue sky is there for the rest of the day, and the black as well. So you could just get used to it. And the same goes for like rainbows, you know, when kids are just fascinated by it, the pure feeling of joy, because you don't see that often. It fascinates you because it's rare. Like I don't know, people with super perfect body proportions or something, or just places. They are this way because they are rare. And you know what? There is this one thing about beauty that also struck me that I thought we should mention today. And this is the, like, trying to define beauty a bit more, giving it a proper definition. I really like the one made by Benedict Spinoza in, like, 17th century, where he said that beauty is not that much a quality of an object, but more the feeling that it evokes in the person that observes it. And I mean, I couldn't agree more with that, because if it is a feeling, then it would explain why it happened so unconsciously with us. Why do we perceive things as beautiful without that much conscious thought? You know, why it's just a feeling that we have, why we can't really explain at times why do we find these things beautiful, so it has to be a feeling. And like with all the feelings, it's biological, and there's supposed to be a reason for it to exist. I mean, for example, I was just killing myself for years trying to understand, why do we have humor? Why are things supposed to be funny? Why is it? Because it's also something very irrational. It's something that happens without much conscious thought. Sometimes you can't even explain why the joke is funny, yet it's funny. And the thing is, I really liked it. It's a study made by some American scientists. I'm sure I don't remember the names, but basically what they said is that beauty is a natural reward mechanism for your brain to analyze and model inside your head situations where something goes wrong. Just the same with rarity, you know? Rarity is at the core of everything beautiful. The same as wrong is at the core of everything funny. Because when you're starting to get conscious of it, you know, every single joke that is funny has something wrong in it, because that's the way nature sort of rewards you for not making this mistake yourself, or just using your brain and your imagination as a way to avoid these mistakes. So when I try to think, okay, why the hell do we have beauty like that? Why is it a feeling? Why do we have to feel it? And the answer that I eventually found to myself is that beauty is in nature's way to remind us of value of the beautiful and rare things around us. And this exists in order to counterweight the way our brain works, because when we look, we don't really see things, you know? Like, just today, I had a coworker just drop by and tell me, hey, you got a haircut. But I got a haircut 2 weeks ago, and we had conversed since then like 5 times. but she doesn't need to understand it to recognize that it's me. That's how your brain works. You look at things like Matrix, just get the information inside your brain. Okay, I analyzed his facial features enough to understand that that's Andrew, and that's it. Nobody needs my elegant facial features or the cute beard or whatever. It just doesn't matter. People just perceive information. And for me, that is so fascinating in being an artist, because what I get to do for a living and what you will get to do for a living, you get to see the world around you, you get to analyze it, you get to break it down, you have to make yourself pay attention to all those, gentle facial features of other people, the way light bounces or refracts through water, or the caustic effects, or the way that rust beautifully grows on a piece of metal. That's just the way it happens, and that is your work. And beauty, when I said that an artist is the person who takes it like a subject and then makes it beautiful, eventually I came to realize that an artist is a person who searches for beauty. And I mean searches because it is supposed to be rare. It is supposed to be hard to find. But when you dedicate your life to it, when you find it, this is sort of your creed. You look for those rare, amazing things that all the people being so busy with their lives have long forgotten about. And then you get to share it with the world. Thank you. So, any questions, or maybe someone would like to do the test? Well, let's see if we got any questions. If not, we can just go through the test for like 5-10 minutes if you guys don't mind. Okay, the test. Yeah, just a sec. Let's start it from somewhere like here. Okay, you can tell me why this image is beautiful. Like, raise a hand and just describe it. I mean, I could probably write down the elements, so you would have a better idea. But it's like subject. I'm too afraid not to make a mistake. Colors, lighting, scale. I'm sorry, you probably won't be able to see it properly, and composition. So yeah, anyone? What makes this image awesome? Come on, just give it a try. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, lighting is great. Obviously, it's like overblown, diffused. It's really like a rare kind of thing. Okay, anything else? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. This is like one of those rare images that has just so many things, tucked into it, because the subject also evokes certain emotion inside your head that you just can't resist. It is strictly specific to this subject. Okay, anything else? Yeah, sure, go ahead. You mean like the detail? Yeah. Yeah, it does, though. To be honest, I've never noticed it. But you know what? What would you say is more important here, scale or composition? Because you can see that you have like this foreground that is out of focus, and then you have the background that is also nicely blurred, so it contributes a bit more. So what helps, when analyzing images, is just to sort of put all those elements in order, which contributes most, the one that you think contributes a bit less and less, and just in a declining order. That makes it a little easier to understand. And maybe for this one, maybe someone can just name like all. Okay, the scale, then like everything that you think, like 3 first most important elements in there, apart from scale. Composition, yeah, I guess it shows scale, but why is there scale? Yeah, what is so huge? No, but I mean in terms of elements, what is so huge? Are the elements of beauty in our image? Oh yeah, it's the subject. Like what we were talking about, the smoke is actually a subject. So here, your subject and your composition and even scale, like they all collaborate to communicate this one thing, that this is something so huge, stellar, and magnificent that it just should blow you away. And all the cool lighting after that. Yeah, sorry, it froze on me. Okay, this one is cool because doing images that are black and white, you immediately cut one element out. So you're left with just 4 things to describe why is this image so beautiful. Anyone has any idea? Go ahead.
The lighting.
Yeah, the lighting is great, and you can see like the scale is great. But just about the lighting, one thing that I wanted to mention is you can see this sort of smoke that's in there that makes the lighting look volumetric. This is also actually the part of lighting, because it could technically be considered, an part of the subject or something, because there was like dust all over. But lighting is everything connected with lighting, and the way lighting goes through space and is refracted and reflected and everything. So this is also part of lighting. So for sure, here's lighting and scale, and probably subject, because the subject contributes to scale, because this is something huge. That's basically the idea. But for this one, I don't know, maybe someone has an idea. Why is this image? And I mean, images don't have to be drop dead gorgeous for you to analyze it, to try to break it down. It could be a mediocre image, and you can tell yourself why is it not good. What's missing in there. So I'm not saying that this image is missing something in particular, but I don't know. Anyone?
Color.
Yeah, color. I would say number 1, right? Makes it really lively, and this yellow car is very nice. Okay, this one. This one is good. Okay, subject. Lighting, subject, and lighting. Okay, so what's the takeaway, main takeaway for you as an artist from this image? So now, whenever you see an image, you can actually study it and understand what was it in particular. Okay, this one. Subject, composition, brilliant. That's all there is. There's a good subject, and it's shown tastefully. There are no colors or scale or even like very dramatic lighting going on. It's just the way you presented this particular subject, which is great. Okay, a flower. Color is great also. Composition. What do you guys think? What is more important in here? Composition or color? Composition. I guess I would agree with that, because you can sort of change the colors, but it will still end up looking probably not half as bad. Okay, we've done something similar. You want to do this one? Lighting. Number 1. It's like this picture is about lighting. The artist just telling you, oh my God, I've seen this. Yeah, this amazing way light plays on these people, on the cloth, and I just want to share it with you. Okay, something more concept arty. Detail number 1, number 2. Scale. Okay, scale and detail is actually the same thing. Composition is good because you have your foreground, midground, and background, and lighting. Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, let's skip something. Okay, let's do this one, for example, like some of the photo shoots they have. The what? Yeah, so subject, in a way. But then again, what else is there? Colors are good, absolutely, and lighting, right? Yeah. Okay. This one, I don't know. We could do. I have something in there. There's actually a piece of my old work. Yeah, it's like 2000 something. I don't know, but it's like very old. Could you tell me what is wrong with it? I mean, not just tell me why is it, what's right in there, but use the same system to try to break down what did I do wrong. Why is it not beautiful? The lighting sucks. Okay. Composition too. Anything else? Detail. Yeah, and as you can see, like when I was talking about being like silly and putting detail all over, you see that I have like this weird stuff on the facades of buildings and like glowing crap, and the windows like of the building in the back are like different colors and everything. I was just trying to maximize this output from detail, just overloading everything I could with stuff, even though it was not supposed to be there. That was just like a cheap hack that I didn't actually realize I was resorting to, because I had a very limited knowledge of art. So yeah, my composition sucked because, I mean, I'll probably have a foreground and a background, but then this thing that's sort of supposed to be a focal point, like a hand statue sticking out, you can't really see it. Because my image is never, yeah, some people like raise their head to the monitor, where there was a statue, what's going on? So that's it. The image didn't even show you what it's supposed to show. And that's why it sucked, and that way I have to be conscious about it. Okay, the next one. Also one of my older PCs. Any idea how you could make it better? The lighting is pretty flat. And actually, one bad thing about the lighting that I learned never to do again, I have shadows that are just gray. they don't have any colors. And this is just so deadly wrong, because this is another opportunity for you to inject color in your scene to create that contrast between the warm and the cold. And it was just completely not present here. I was like, yeah, the shadow is great. It always looks just dirty. It never looks pretty. So yeah, anything else apart from lighting? Okay, I would say, for example, composition for me, because if I somehow opened up the background and showed maybe like some skyscrapers in downtown or there in the back or something like that, I would add more depth to my image. You know, I would make it more three-dimensional on that fake 2D plane. I would convey that there is life behind these three buildings, and it's not like a set from a movie or something. Okay, and right now, yeah, I think we have something from a game called Nexus by Ilphonic. Any idea why this is really, really nice? Like the first thing, the best thing about this real-time environment. Color? What's better here, like colors or the details? Colors, absolutely. I also agree. You have the contrast of warm and cold, and then again, it's not your typical, you know, cyanish kind of color that you use in movies now a lot with orange, but it's orange and this more aqua blue. Okay, this is very, very awesome image by 343 Industries, and it's from Halo 4. And now looking at it, what makes this environment work? Why is it like so great? Okay, the first thing, let's try, yeah, please. Composition, what's more important here? How do you think? Composition or the lighting? Lighting, okay. The next thing, what do you think would be composition or detail? Well, it is kind of hard to judge after that, but at least we can all agree that there is this one thing, one primary thing that makes it stand out. And when you look at it, oh hey, I don't even see any texturing going on there. It's all like monochromatic in a way, you know, even though it's supposed to be like different objects, and it's not like there's a filter on top that just makes it green. It's the lighting. That's it. Your lighting took responsibility for all the colors that you have there, and for all the focal points, and even like the rhythm that you have with showing all the structures up top. It's also, in a way, done by lighting. So lighting just dominates all here. Okay, this is a bit trickier, I guess, but any idea? Okay, that's from Killzone 3. Detail. Yeah, scale and detail. You know, this is like a very good cheap trick that people try to utilize as much as they can. You see that particle effects right in the foreground? They're actually very useful to create this sort of compositional feeling where you have depth to your fictional space, because these objects are like everywhere in the air, and they get smaller in scale as they move further from the camera. So that creates this illusion of depth. That's how you perceive things as having depth, you know, and it has this fake detail and also aids composition, because suddenly, especially in games, you don't really have a foreground usually, because you're like the camera is hovering here and there and you can't allow for it. But if you put this thing as a filler in your space, then somehow you always have something right in front of the camera that creates this foreground for you. Okay, so what do you think is more important here, detail or lighting? Yeah, and then, you know what? Actually, I'm looking at the monitor here and the projector. The projector is a bit washed out, but like when you look at the monitor, you really see that lighting is not that washed out, and you can see like that it has a more profound contribution. So I would also say lighting myself, for example, but it could differ. Okay, this one. What do you like about this one? Yeah, well, we have more or less a foreground and a midground. That could be, but any ideas like detail? What do you think is more important here, detail or color? That's a tough one, I know, but both. Yeah, I guess both, but for a moment, just try to imagine this environment like without that much detail. Like imagine that there's not bricks over there, but just stucco, you know, and it's like not a striped whatever it is, tent, but they're like all monochromatic and stuff like that. Would that make an image significantly worse? So what is more important here at play than the detail? What do you think? Yeah, I guess the colors and actually like the lights, because they just go hand in hand there. They sort of communicate here in a way that you get this really nicely exposed environment. When you can see the color, the subtle color in your shadows, and you can see that everything is bright, which is usually pleasant. And then again, this brightness, aids to portray these colors as bright and vivid, which is also always a nice thing. So technically, you're not showing like something super spectacular, but by the choice of your lighting and your colors, you still are keeping this thing very pleasant for the eye. Yeah, and so I guess that's it, because we just have 1 minute, and I don't know. Thank you.